All right, welcome everybody to another fantastic episode of the Nailed It podcast. This is our show where we interview people like Jason Pierre Bible. Big thanks to the Texas Wealth Academy for hosting us in this podcasting studio every week. And Urban Restoration is my construction company. As you can see, big Astros fan. That's why my logo has stripes on it. And I'm joined today by who the locals in Isla Mujeres call Senor Tejas.
Senor, that's right.
Senor Tejas.
I think when you guys said that is when they gave me the room upgrade, by the way.
The room upgrade. Yeah, you got the free upgrade. I had to pay for mine.
Yeah, they were like, hey, we hooked you up. I said, oh, yes, my reputation goes as far south as Isla Mujeres, which is just off of Cancun, for those of you who are need a little geography lesson there today.
Yes, it's a nice little island resort. Jason and I just got back from a week-long excursion for my honeymoon, where Jason came.
Just me and Ken Curtis.
Ken, Will Dinker, and Kendra's parents. So yeah, it was wonderful. It was a very fun 5 days.
Yeah,
filled with excitement. And okay, so for those people who, everyone's really going to know you. So I don't really want to jump into hey, tell my audience about how you got started in real estate. What I want to do is something different with you.
Okay.
It's something that's off script we haven't talked about.
Okay.
What is your superhuman strength?
Oh, is this like, what is your...
What's the thing that makes you... What's the thing that makes you crush your competition and why you know other people won't?
Oh, I think this is real easy. I learn much faster than most people.
I was watching you read on the plane.
Yeah, I'm always reading. I finished that book. Okay, so you were watching me on the plane, right? So I was reading two books. One of them I just finished last night. That book I downloaded on the plane, I'm halfway through.
The beer next door.
It's called I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell.
Oh, Beer in Hell.
And gotcha. it's a rough book, but it's hilarious. I'll tell you that. So yeah, I'm halfway through that one. I finished this most recent one last night, right after I got off another podcast. But yeah, it's the ability to learn. Now here's what I realized early on. It took me to, probably senior in college, if not my first year of graduate school, where what I figured out is I'm not one of these guys that just reads one book and kind of, okay, now I got it. I have to literally consume everything. And then my mind kind of starts making sense of stuff. And I think you're seeing that with a lot of the stuff I'm reading right now, because you and I talk about a lot of stuff outside of real estate. And so that's really what's going on. I can learn much faster. So I'll tell you, in real estate right now, I'm learning about casinos and hotels. So I'm starting to consume all this information on casino and hotels because I want to buy one in Vegas.
Yeah.
So it's that's I think my specialty there is I learn really quick. And I don't have any, and part and parcel with that, I don't have any sacred cows. Like, if we've got to destroy something to build something better, I'm all for it. I am not, how do you put this? I'm not nostalgic for this is the way we used to do it. I'm the exact opposite. Now, there's pros and cons of that, right? Because you can jettison things too quickly. But it's a conversation you and I had the entire time in Cancun, which was, you got to let go of something good to get something great. And so I'm learning that process now. Now I completely understand it in real estate and business. I live that every day. But in my personal life, that's where I'm having some real challenges. But
no, this is that's brilliant, because I think as people, I think my success in business changed when my personal life became more fluid.
I agree with that.
And predictable.
Yeah.
Too many times people stifle their own success by the people that they hang around. And the number one person that you hang around is your partner.
Yeah.
Right? So your partner can either be a deficit or your partner can be a curse. A blessing.
Right.
A lot of people will not let go because of the comfort.
100%.
So they hang on to things that they're nostalgic on, like, this was my first job.
Right.
This was my, this is my title.
Yeah, this is who I am. I'm
right.
This thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. I notice it all the time when I see someone do a podcast, and they constantly put the title Like, this is going to make me watch your show better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Director of loan servicing.
Yeah.
Right? No one is following your podcast because you're a director. No one's following my podcast because I'm the CEO of Urban Restoration.
You know what's,
I'm the only employee at Urban Restoration.
I know. You know what's funny is I bet no one knows my title. I have two titles, and I bet nobody knows what they are, which is hilarious because that's a good point.
People don't follow. It's in the movie Braveheart.
Okay.
Do you remember when they were talking? When Mel Gibson comes in, kicks the doors open, they were having a private meeting amongst the Klansmen, and the Klansmen were deciding about negotiating property with England.
That's right. Yeah.
And he storms off after this tirade. He storms off, and the king of or the prince of Scotland comes out, and he says, "Why won't they follow me?" And he turns around and he says, "People don't follow titles.
That's
they
right.
follow courage."
Yes.
And then that's when they grasp the forearms. I love the forearm grasp.
Yeah. That's
such a powerful handshake.
It is.
I'm Scottish and Irish.
I think we ought to bring that back.
Yeah.
I'm Welsh and German.
But because that blows away the fist dap.
Oh yeah.
And it brings you into closer proximity. The reason why handshakes are so important to me, I believe, is it's a transfer of energy. I'm transferring my energy to you. I don't really get that on a fist bump.
I'm not a big fist bump guy. Like I get it, Corona, whatever, but I'm not a big fan of the fist bump, to be honest with you.
What else are you not a big fan of in the real estate world today?
Oh, jeez.
You had a good one in the pool. You had a good one in the pool about the downfall of the networking. This was so JB. This was so good. The downfall of the Houston real estate networking events.
Yeah, I think so in the span of 3 months, we now have one of the largest networking events in Houston. And I don't want to say it started out as a joke, but it started out as a let's do a networking happy hour at noon on Friday that's within walking distance of my house. It was a completely selfish thing. I'm like, hey, maybe a couple guys want to get together, drink some beers, and they make this great fish.
Jason, we did that with HRE2.
Yeah, we did the same. That thing blew up overnight,
that
too.
That was literally 1 block over from my house.
Yeah, because we'd walk over to your house. And then where I was living was like 3 blocks away, right? 4 blocks away.
Right. You were right down the street. Yeah.
So
HRE2 was called the Houston Real Estate Experience, which was a 4-hour-long podcast where we would start sober and end partially drunk.
Yeah, and it was
on White Claws.
On what that was me, you, and Brian. That was funny. That one week it was just the 3 of us because it was raining.
28 White Claws.
It was absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So, and I think we have pictures of all of us with all those things. Anyway, so the Houston real estate networking events have, and I don't think this is a result of Corona. The super investor meeting, which was the biggest meeting for the longest time, was a great meeting. My favorite is when they were doing it at SRO. If any of you guys have been around when Jed and them were doing the event at SRO, it was absolutely insane.
That was when My House Deals was the only ticket in town to finding off-market leads on the internet.
Yeah, it was really, really good. It was I don't even want to call it networking. It was almost mastermind quality. Like, it was that high level. And then that event got huge. They went to Texans, got huge. They went to RCC, got even bigger. And you just kind of lost that closeness, if you will, of the event. And then, of course, coronavirus happened, and now it's on this other side of town. And, I think they're doing some other different things. But I think the challenge is with most of these real estate networking events is they're little more than just let's sit around and drink. And look, I know this is crazy hearing this from me, right? Because I'm always a guy that's like, after the speaker's done, it's like, let's do shots, let's go to the next bar. Like, I'm that guy. Like, I love going out, I love entertaining, I love being out and about in town. I always have. This is such a fun town to be in, and I think there's a huge lack of investor events that are providing real value. And we started this little fish fry as a total whim, and it's now one of the largest events in Houston. In fact, I think last month, because I got counts from just about everybody. No, it wouldn't have been last month because Dot's Hour was pretty big, but the month before that, it was the biggest event in Houston. And this month it will probably be, if it's not number one, it'll be in the top 3. And I'll tell you, the people that show up to that thing are serious folks. We don't allow a bunch of vendors that are selling stuff to each other. We don't allow a bunch of...
It's just one vendor.
It's one vendor. Yeah, it's actually 2. We usually get 1 or 2. And it's a great little event. But I'm trying to remember the specific instance you were talking about when we were sitting in the pool.
When we were sitting in the pool, it was like it was the day after the incident, the day after we went fishing, and then we came back and we had all the way until the yacht.
Yeah,
we were in the pool hanging
Yes.
out, and you were mixing and mingling with new people, and
you leave me at a bar for 5 minutes, I get to know everybody at the pool, right? It was
yeah, the pool bar became Jason's networking hub. And I think that is I'm going to audible your superhuman strength.
okay.
I think your superhuman strength is your ability to engage. I believe that you have a charisma that I've known you since before you were Mr. Texas.
Yeah.
I knew you when you were just Jason Pierre Bible. The up and over with no facial hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, the up and over is Jason's hairdo. It goes
Yeah.
up and over.
It goes
And
up and-
it was closer to the front of
It was a little
forehead.
closer to the forehead back then.
Much like the girls he tries to pick up at the bar. His hair is racing away from him too. Mine's already gone.
Yeah.
So I noticed that you have a insane ability to just go up and befriend very quickly people at the bar, or people wherever we're at.
Yeah.
You get bored easily.
Oh, yeah.
I think that is your superhuman strength. I'm sure the quickness in which you accept knowledge and you can verbally spit that back out to other people. That is great. But to me, it's your curiosity for life.
Yeah.
The ability to not let fear dictate your reaction, your next move. A lot of people get stuck in fear.
Oh, I agree.
We were talking about what makes other people not successful. And it was, you called, or we both, I think, agreed, it was comfort.
Absolutely.
The comfort of the past norms, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so we're stuck here again talking about these networking events, and really why the networking events aren't working is because we're stuck in norm.
Yeah.
Instead of taking the opportunity to engage with the audience and to interact on on kind of like a global Texas, online presence, it's taken a lot of people to get there slowly.
I agree with some of that.
Because it worked so well for so long before Corona.
Well, here's I've got a whole team now at the office that I didn't have before Corona, and some real professional people that are outside real estate. And what I have recognized with a lot of real estate events is that it's a bunch of people networking that are really pretending. Now, this, I'll tell you here, Total Wealth Academy is totally different, right? Our events are completely different. Like they're, I think you're speaking here, aren't you, this week or next week, something like that?
I'm speaking November the 11th.
Okay, so November the 11th.
The power of no, which I'm quickly converting into how to catch a big fish.
Okay.
Which we can talk about.
We can talk about here in a little bit. But so I think events like Steve has, and I think events like we have now are, now this little fish fry aside, all of our events are like, do we have one tonight, another one Thursday? It's like they're highly educational. Here's what happened. A couple of months ago, I got real angry.
You did, and you started doing radio shows on it.
Yeah, I started doing radio shows on it. I got real angry, and I said,
By the way, you can catch Jason and Rob live around 12 o'clock.
Yeah, around 12
day.
o'clock. If you catch us on Facebook or YouTube, otherwise our show's at
it re-airs
9 o'clock at night.
At 9 o'clock, yeah.
On, is it 700? We're live in Vegas now, Southern California, New York, New Jersey, so and here in Houston. But so I think I got real angry because I said, what if I was just this regular guy? Like I went back to try to think about when I got into real estate, and I went to some of these networking events. I'm like, this is great. We're all, quote, networking and we're just kind of drinking, but I'm not really learning anything here. So my anger was, as an industry, we're doing a real disservice to the city of Houston.
This is where we were getting into the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
At the pool. You said, my problem with the drinking and non-education is that it's just a bunch of non-educated people drinking.
That's right.
There's no business to business really transacting. It's just people who can't pick up their own tab, or I'm picking up their tab.
Yeah. I'm paying. I'm putting on a networking event to pay people who I'm probably not going to do business with. And that makes no sense to me. Like the folks I love buying tabs for and going out to dinner and all that are folks I'm doing business with, or have a real potential to do business with. And I think that you and I have talked about some other things outside of real estate offline about training people on what a relationship looks like. And the problem is that if we continue to do events like this that are just no education drink-a-thons with a bunch of people who are not going to do business with us, we're training the industry that is an okay relationship to continue. And I don't think that's something we should really. Now, truth be told, I don't care what you guys do with your money. Like if you guys are putting on events and I don't care. But I don't care what you do. I mean, I do, but I don't. So for us, we really started looking at the landscape and said, hey, if we want to do a networking event, this is where we're going to be. You guys pick up your own tab. We're all going to hang out. We're going to have a good time. Here's another way I put it. So I've known Steve. Steve was my first mentor back all the way in like 2011. And if Steve had ever put out an email and said, hey, I'm going to be here Friday afternoon, networking event. We're just going to be drinking some beer and eating some fish, I would have literally left right then to go. And I wouldn't even care if I had to pick up his tab. Like I mean, you could tell me I could hang out with Steve Davis for a couple hours. Like, are you kidding me? So
I don't think people understand the value of that because they just become complacent that Eddie Gant's going to be at Stampede Houston.
Yeah.
The reason why I have a good relationship with Eddie Gant is because Eddie Gant really poured into my relationship. He took me out to eat. He, not just from the SRO, but he brought it down to a very micro level, one-on-one. And I think when you can get to people one-on-one, that's when the real value of learning happens. Instead of just what I had a problem with is we would be in our circle clicking, like we always do. We have our little click in our circle, and people will come up to us with their business card, trying to pass out a business card while we're all in the middle of a conversation, trying to sell us on why we should use them to be a realtor, or they've got a couple wholesale deals or whatever. And they haven't really just sat there and listened to the conversation and then try to pick up on a cue of how do I engage this group? They seem to be really interested in each other.
So I have considered putting on a class on how to do networking.
Oh my gosh,
because there's so much psychology that takes place there, and the vast majority of people are really bad at it. And it's getting worse because we're turning into this social media, app nonsense.
Yep.
And it's like, you don't know how to walk in, have a conversation. And I see it even with people who are good, where within 5 minutes of the conversation, they're handing business cards to people. And I'm like, I don't do business cards.
I don't do business cards either.
I'm like, I don't get it. So
I never see Tony Robbins walking around handing out business cards.
Do you see Donald Trump handing out business cards?
Steve Jobs doesn't hand out business cards.
No.
Elon Musk isn't handing out business cards. That's the deal. You need to be such a person that your brand needs to follow you.
All right, you're bringing up a really good point here, because a lot of people say, oh, well, Jason, I'm branding. No, you're not branding. First of all, people don't even know what a brand really means. A brand is what other people think of you.
Yeah.
That's really what a brand is.
When you drink one of these, what do you call it? And regardless of the logo, when you drink one of these, everyone calls it a Coke.
Down here in the South, we do.
Yeah. Up north, they call it
pop or soda. There's that
soda.
They got some
Pop.
soda.
I gotta get some pop.
But I think to go back to your point is, where do we bring real value? And the other part, I get it. Part of this industry is, selling stuff, right? They've got stuff to sell all the time. I just think that this is, we just make this a lot harder than it needs to be. Like, this is really not that hard of an industry.
So let me ask you a question. Let's dive into something people can take away and do something practically. When you got started on, let's say you only had $2,000 to your name.
Okay.
Where would you spend? How would you market to build a brand with $2,000?
Okay, so we're assuming. Let's talk about $2,000. Like, do I have 6 months of savings and all that kind of stuff?
No. Just you've got $2,000 to your name.
You don't do any of this.
Okay.
You don't do any of this.
So tell people, give someone an idea of how they can market without money.
Okay, let's back up. Let me tell you, if you don't have a dime to your name and $2,000 not have a dime to your name, you have a problem. And here's the problem. In a business, in your personal life, most people have a stable income, somewhat stable income. So all they have to do is manage expenses. When you get into a business, you have to manage both expenses and income. So I had a guy one time at a seminar I was given, sitting in the very front row. He said, Jason, I need to make $10,000 next month. What do I do? And I said, get a job. And everyone was like, what? I said, look, dude, if you can't manage a stable income and variable expenses in your life, you can't manage a variable income and variable expenses. Let me put it this way. Your skill set is so low, you have no business being in business. Like, especially in real estate, I firmly believe that. Now, if you want to open some Etsy store, or you want to do some eBay thing, arbitrage, like, what you want to do the garage sale thing like Gary Vaynerchuk does, that's fine. But real estate's a different game.
I think you got lost somewhere in the process of the learning because I think you had a really good job before you started real estate.
Absolutely. So
you came from a background of, I have a little bit to throw at this monster.
Yeah.
There are the Funks, me, Brent Phillips, some guys,
AC Ramos.
AC.
I mean, he was in prison twice, right?
So there's the guys that had to we had to hack the not having money system. Right. So my practical deal is to make videos daily. And to also become, like, if I have no money, but I have a little, you either have this, you have no money or time or no money, or you have money and time, and that's the best of both worlds. I have money and time, then I can throw it at real estate, right? But when you have no money, but you have time, you can throw your time and do what Brian Burr did. But Brian had money and time.
Yeah.
So he became a learner of the process of real estate. I had no money, but I had a little bit of time. So I got my real estate license, and then I just started becoming a guy named Robert Hammond. I just became his right-hand man.
So here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with this as an example. It's called the Apex Fallacy. You guys are so outside the norm.
Yes.
You guys are like 0.9999. So meaning that if someone, because I get asked this all the time. And the problem is like, can an AC Ramos twice in prison, living in a shack with his first child, become successful?
This is the main reason why people don't succeed, is what Jason is getting ready to expel.
Well, so here's the deal. Can a guy like AC Ramos succeed?
Yes.
Absolutely. However, they make movies about that. Like, it's so extraordinary. People make movies about that. So when folks give me advice or ask me for advice, I got $5,000. What do I do? You need to figure out how to make more money in what you're already doing. No, I'm dead serious. I mean,
I know, but it's like true.
It's true. It's like the likelihood you're going to succeed is so small. I hear this moron stuff like, Jeff Bezos just like started in his garage and just had nothing. He worked at a hedge fund. Like, he was a capital raiser. Like, this guy was an animal before he got to Amazon. Now, he looked like a cute little dork. That guy was an animal. Brock Wagner here, that St. Arnold's, went to Rice, worked in the financial services industry. Well, how did St. Arnold, now don't get me wrong, they got great marketing and all that stuff, but he was a capital monster before he got into the beer industry. What you will find is when you go into a lot of these businesses, very, very few of these guys succeeded with, I've got my bootstraps on, I'm going to go do this. No, a lot of these guys have got what I call translatable experience from another industry. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Where I see people get stuck in their business is they never grow out of that experience. So let's say you're really good at oil and gas sales and you start a company that does XYZ, whatever it is. You'll get stuck in that proverbial sales role and you won't know how to grow a company. Like, you got to figure out, how do I hire? How do I fire? How do I scale? Like, scaling is like a whole different thing, right? So can you be the Curtis Warren, Brant Phillips, AC Ramos, Chris Funk? Can you be those guys? Absolutely. But it's so improbable. I mean, I literally talk, I mean, your career is much longer than mine. I've talked to thousands of these guys over the years. I got $2 to my name. How do I become successful? And I'm like, bro, I got to be honest with you. Can you do it? Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? No. It's so statistically outside the norm. I don't know if you're going to make it.
I love what James Toller does. James says that people come to him all the time and they've got this information. He says, I give them one job to do before we talk again.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, and then I know if they do it,
then they're sort of serious.
Then they're sort of serious. But if not, then they don't have a strong why. And I think it breaks down to, you have to love the thought of being rich more than you're okay with the sense of just being broke. Like, a lot of people are just okay being just okay.
So I think this gets into an interesting conversation. When I get some guys that come to me, they're like, hey, there's a young guy right now, Brian introduced me to, and he said, hey, would you help me out in real estate? And I'm brand new. And I'm like, look, bro, you don't even know what questions to ask because you don't even know the vocabulary. So I said, look, read these 3 books and then call me.
Right.
So he'd call me a couple times, said, have you finished those 3 books? No, I'm halfway through the first one. You can call me back when you finish these 3 books, which is the reason I'm writing Real Estate 101 right now, because no one has like a real good 101 book. So I'm just going to say, here's my $10 Amazon book. Go buy it and read it and call me. Then we can have a conversation. But
this is like the Coach Corey Wayne 3% man.
That's right. What's he tell you to do? Read it 3 times, 5 times, something like that?
I think he says read it 10 times before you message me for advice on women.
Well,
it's funny because JB and I talk about, just for people on here, if you're, hey, you need to scoot in a little bit because you're like off. There you go.
Okay, there we go.
So I think it's so great to be with somebody like on a vacation away from real estate, just in a close circle, because everyone we know, including Will Dinker, everybody has another mentor for another facet that they're trying to work on.
Oh, absolutely.
If you want to be if you want to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you better not be just looking at Amazon videos and practicing with your kids.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
Right? You have to have a coach.
So last night I was on Entrepreneurs in Cars, Rich Cooper's podcast, which is mainly about the funny thing. This is kind of the mantra. It's money, muscles, game. That's really what it is. And it's the funny thing is last night was why 1% men don't chase women. And it was funny because we're getting some feedback in our forum where guys are like, we want to talk more about business and all that. And I'm like, maybe you don't understand. Game is not intimate relationships. Game is what you saw at the pool when I'm sitting there networking with everybody. What do you do? Okay, that's interesting. Why did you choose that? Blah, 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 blah. You know, it's all that kind of stuff to kind of assess who these people are and if they're interesting and that sort of thing. And I just find it. So I actually have 2 coaches out of that whole group, and we did the show. It was about a 2-hour long show, and then at the end of the show, a couple of us stayed on, just the guys that were on the panel, and Rich says something. He goes, "Hey, Jason, I would imagine that learning game. Let's talk about what game is. It's learned charisma. Is probably the best way to put it. It's learned charisma, and people think charisma is all about you, and it's really not. What it really is drawing the positive things out of the person you're talking to. So you and I talked about this last night. It's like,
well, and also everybody that got up to speak at my wedding, on Friday night, they all kind of had something very similar to say, even though most people on Facebook would never agree with that.
Yeah.
The people who actually know me to be a giving, loving, caring, concerned friend.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
On Facebook, you would not see that.
Oh, no.
My persona on Facebook is asshole, don't talk to me, my penis is bigger than yours. Yeah. You know, it's bullshit. That's not really who I am.
Well, and
that's who I want you to think I am, so you don't talk to me.
Well, so Rob, when we first started working together, he goes, you know, when I would see you on stage, I thought you were a total a-hole. He said, but when I meet you in person, like, you're an incredibly giving person. Like, you just, and I said, well, part of the reason I do that on stage is to mark such a contrast. Because the problem is, if you don't, there's so much noise out there. You have to be really clear with your communication. And one of the ways to do that, Tony Robbins talks about it, you have to use that shocking language, right? That breaks a pattern.
Taboo language.
Yeah, it breaks that circuit, right? And they're like, oh, wait, this guy's different, right?
Yeah.
This guy and it's not just dropping F-bombs.
This guy said, fuck you.
Yeah, it's like not just dropping F-bombs all the time. But so anyway, so I'm on the podcast last night. We have this conversation afterwards. And Rich says, hey, Jason, I would imagine you use game, in other words, learned charisma, more in your business than you do anywhere else. And I said, Rich, I'll tell you right now, it is way more important in business than it is in your intimate relationships. And everyone was like, oh, and there were a couple other business guys in there, and they were like, absolutely.
Because if you can take people who are working with you or working for you, and you can breathe life into them, they are going to work for you even that much better.
I agree. Here's where I think it really matters is in outcome independence. And I'm actually doing a mindset class right now with Paul over at Apex Mindset. I just started the course this morning. And outcome independence, let me define what that is, because we talk about it here. The reason I'm talking about a lot of this mindset stuff, because Steve is all over it. Like, Steve
well, we're getting ready to do, January's coming.
Yeah,
and the whole goal setting workshop is going to be up here.
Yeah.
I think I'm speaking at that. I'm not sure who else is. But anyway, goal setting and mindset is like, you can't help but walk through the hall. You even said it yourself.
Yeah, it's great. This is an awesome office.
When you walk through the hallway, you can't help but find inspiration. There's posters of inspiration everywhere.
So let me explain what outcome independence is, because people talk about it, but very few people live it. And Steve, absolutely. I told him this one day. We were at the bar, and I said, you are the guy that I've always looked up to that really lives this. And this is what this means. Outcome independence is the belief that whatever happens, I'm going to be successful. Whatever happens, whether it's, health-wise, we actually have a guy in one of our groups right now that has cancer. And so we're having these conversations with him. He's giving us updates on us inside our Facebook group. And he's like, look, I'm going to be fine. And so I actually posted in there, and thankfully it's just a men's group, because people would have taken real offense to this. I said, all this is just another title, cancer survivor. I'm like, that's the way to look at this. And he was like, ooh, you're absolutely right. So that's how you build an outcome independent mindset. So when a relationship falls apart, when you end up in a divorce, you have a falling out with your family, maybe you and your brother start fighting, or your real estate deals just are falling apart. You're in the middle of COVID, your business is having challenges. Outcome independence is stepping back and saying, I'm going through these trials. It's okay. It's the belief that
it's okay to not be okay right now.
It's the belief that, guess what? I'm being set up for something much better. Much better. So now that's hard when you're going through it, and you and I have talked. I'm going through it right now. It's like, man, this kind of sucks. But here's what I already know: it's going to be better on the other side.
And your transition yesterday was, you had an aha moment. You said, well, if this and this and this didn't happen, then I probably would have been better off 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And I said, no. What you need to say is, I shouldn't have allowed this and this and this to happen
Absolutely.
3 months ago. And I would, it's the ownership component. That being able to own the reason for the outcome allows you to be more outcome independent.
100%. So if you go into extreme ownership by Jocko Willink, right? People think that, okay, this relationship imploded, and I need to take ownership on it, and it's my fault. And it's like, well, hold on. Let's identify the proximate cause of why this thing imploded. There were red flags, this particular relationship, all the way up a year ago November. Like, it was literally a year ago November. And that was a conversation I had with you, as I was like, I then thought, because of some other circumstances, this would get better. It didn't. If I had taken ownership of that back in November and December, it would have been over, done. No. So that's the ownership piece. It's not you're going to change somebody. It's like, hey, this isn't going to work. No big deal. Walk away.
Yeah, that makes you outcome independent. And then that makes you infinitely more magnetic.
Absolutely.
And so when people come in business, when people come to the table and you can tell they haven't had a haircut in months because they can't afford it, they are outcome dependent. They need that wholesale deal to go through.
This is my point. Yeah. Oh, got to have it happen. Got to have it. Oh, no.
Yeah. We can all tell that you need your wholesale deal to go through because you're throwing out, like we say this all the time in relationships. When you're convincing, you're losing.
That's right. I shouldn't have to convince anybody of anything.
No.
In business or personal relationships.
The numbers never lie.
Right.
And in relationship, we call that patterns.
Yeah, absolutely.
Patterns don't lie in relationships. And in real estate, numbers don't lie.
That's right.
It's either this is the ARV, but what a lot of people try to do, and the failure in real estate is if you are constantly only betting on things that will come, it's the same as a relationship where you mainly see this with girls or women, where they someone gave Kendra and I this advice at the pool after we had already been married. They said, men marry hoping the woman will never change. Mm-hmm. Women marry hoping the man will change.
There's a bit of truth in that, but I'll give you even a better one because this is an Evo Psych deal. Men get into relationships and quote love opportunistically. No, I'm sorry. Opportunistically, where they sit back and they say, "Hey, look, there's some bad things here, but I can make those changes, right? Like I can make." They have this real positive mindset instead of stepping back and saying, wow, there's a lot of red flags here. And one of the things, I had this conversation with my parents last night about something else that's going on in our family. You talk about patterns, and patterns rarely change. So when you start to see this pattern, it's a pattern that usually is produced throughout their life. So one of the things I recognized in relationships is I don't ask a lot of questions because a lot of times they will just tell you who they are. This goes for men and women. So they'll tell you exactly who they are. They'll tell you about past relationships, past business deals, all that. And you start kind of putting the pattern together and you go, okay, I see what's going on here. And then as men, we're like, yeah, but I can change that. Like men believe they can actually change that.
You have changed some things.
I have, but you can only pull the needle so far, right?
Right. But another reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, where I really felt you nailed it, was in your physique.
Yeah,
the transformation outwardly.
Yeah,
we talk about this a lot. The outward portion of Jason Bible is you're. Let's say you're at a 9, mm-hmm. right? It's the inward portion. Is typically the part where most men can make the easiest transition first. Mm-hmm. And then it's that outward component that's the hardest to follow. For me, golly, I've got the inward stuff pretty good. I love Kendra. I do all that. the one thing that I want to give to Kendra is like this perfectly well sculpted body, right? Which I'm not sure I'm ever going to get to, but because I love chocolate and I like tacos.
Yeah.
And I love beer.
There you go.
But I try to compensate for my lack of being a physical specimen.
Yeah.
By loving Kendra the best way I know how, which is with this opportunistic love that you talk about.
Well, here's what I realized when, and I'm dating now, but when I first got divorced, I was a healthy dude, right? And the women, what I recognized is the women that I was attracting, they were all absolutely beautiful. And I sat there and looked and I said, well, what is it, if you want to attract, and this is probably not the best way to say it, but I started looking at it, I'm like, should I be in better shape to attract women? And I'm like, that's the wrong way to look at this. I should be in better shape because I want to be in better shape.
Yes.
And that turned my motivation completely around.
Okay. So now we're hitting back to why most people fail.
Yeah.
And you were saying that Brant, AC, myself, Chris Funk, we're in the 0.0009%, whatever.
Yeah.
The reason why people fail is their motivation is misguided.
I agree. And I want to go back to something you said earlier. You said earlier, hey, you're why you've got a need to be rich. And I'll tell you right now, Rob and I could retire today and we can't spend it all in a lifetime. So your motivation at some point has to be something different.
Has to be greater than yourself.
Right. But here's where people screw up all the time. And I'll tell you, after a couple of drinks, I usually call people out on it. And I do it. This is going to be really mean. I'm going to tell you right now, this will be the meanest thing you ever hear me say. If you come up to me at a real estate event, and I had this happen, it happens all the time. Jason, I've been in this business 2 or 3 years. I've been to a bunch of your events. I've met all these guys. I'm just trying to figure this out. And I can't figure it out. And it's just been really hard. And I'm like, okay. And they'll say, but I got to tell you my why. And I'm like, well, what's your why? Oh, it's for my family. Like, I love my family. And I really want, to do well so I can do well by them. And I would say, well, I guess your family's not that important to you. Because if that's your why and you can't read the books and make offers and because these people are smart. Like, these are not, for the most part, there are no stupid people at these real estate events. They're engineers or doctors or lawyers. They're really smart people.
Man, I am not seeing that. I see you and I must be seeing that. I'm seeing people who stand in line at Best Buy on Thursday night of Thanksgiving for the $300 1,000-inch TV.
I got a little bit different people at my events, so maybe that's what it is.
Maybe it's your events that you go to, because the events that I'm going to, I'm not getting these high level thinkers. I'm getting the people who are the get trick quickers.
Yeah, those guys they'll never do anything of value. But most of the folks I interact with, it's like, well, my why is, Jason, I got this really strong why, and it's my family. And I'm like, then why are you not successful? Because if that why is that strong, here's why I make that point. Your why cannot be outside of you. So I told this on the podcast last night, in the after hours section of the podcast when it was just 6 of us on. And a couple guys are having problems with some of the stuff going on in their families, which is kind of typical. They're going through these transition phases, so it's rubbing some of their family members the wrong way. And I said, look, one of the hardest things to do in your entire life is to be outcome independent with the results of your children. So I hear this all the time. Jason, you're going to teach your boys to run your business. Like, are you? And I tell them no. Like, you could really screw children up if you put this huge expectation that they're supposed to run this empire when dad's done. That's their choice if they want to do it or not.
Have you seen the Shaquille O'Neal post?
Mm-mm.
Like, his kids are pissed at him.
Oh, for what?
So I'm glad you asked that. His kids are really mad because they're saying they're coming to him for money. And he goes, but we're rich. And he says, no. I'm rich.
Yeah.
We are not rich.
That's right.
I'm rich. And I tell my kids this all the time. I had this very tough conversation with my daughter. I am not paying for your college.
Yeah.
One, you don't know what you want. You're going for a marketing degree. You could get a marketing degree on YouTube.
That's right.
Two, I didn't have anyone pay for my college. And three, I think it teaches you to rely on me, a man, when you should rely on you in resource.
Yeah.
Resource your way and figure it out. Because Kendra's kids, Kendra, her and her husband, they would have been perfectly well off. The kids would have been fine. Mm-hmm. They would have gone to whatever college they wanted. When they got a divorce, it forced her oldest daughter to really have to resource. Mm-hmm. Now I see her daughter hustle. Her daughter saved $10,000 over the last 2 years. She saved $10,000 to be able to not work her way through college, so that she could just live off that money for as long as she could. And then she chose not to drive a car to Texas A&M.
It's great.
What else does not driving a car force you to do?
All kinds of other stuff.
You have to beg for a ride. You have to negotiate for a car. You have to meet other people. It forces you to get out of your comfort zone a lot. Now, we can't even convince her to come back home because she's having such a good time. My other daughter has 3 jobs at school. Mm-hmm. She does computing work for me. She works at a coffee shop where she makes $20 an hour. Yeah, tip share.
Dude, are you serious?
Tip share. And she gets up early, 4 o'clock. Now she calls me. This is how I want to put a stamp on Jason's point about the income independent with your kids. My daughter called me up and said, I'm not really sure if Abilene Christian is the place for me anymore. Oh, and I'm not even sure if college is the place for me.
Yeah, that's okay.
I think she said, would you be willing to help me start a business? I said, I will fund that.
Yeah. Give me a proposal.
I will fund that. But I'm not funding college because I don't believe in it.
Yeah.
I believe in it if you want to go be a teacher. I mean, not a teacher, a lawyer, a CPA, a doctor, and engineer. I think you need specific schooling.
You need, absolutely.
But when I've got 18-year-olds that are making millions of dollars on YouTube, you just need to be a YouTuber, right?
Well, I think here's the more important piece
for marketing, at least.
And what I have found is that here is what that is teaching. We can get into the business side, then we can get into the relationship side. It's teaching 2 things, especially to women. It's teaching, A, that the men she will have in her life will have to have that level of excellence early on. She's not going to be screwing around with the losers and the guys that don't have jobs or the guys that daddy's writing checks. Those gals are they're going to have those dudes, right, from time to time.
We went through that her freshman year.
Okay. But her junior, senior year, especially when she gets about 25, 26, that nonsense is going to be out the door. She is only going to be dating what we call high quality, high value guys because she can't put up with anything else. This is almost exclusive of the gals I end up dating because they're like, who else am I supposed to date? Women don't date down. Is probably a good way to put it. And she started out early on building this level of excellence. So that's going to happen. The second thing that's going to happen is she's going to be so financially well off. She's not going to be like a lot of these entrepreneurs I see. I see a lot of it in women where they carry these huge student debt loads into a business, into either quote in either a family or a business. And a family is a business. So now you're bringing this financial burden into the business, into the house. And I can tell you as a guy, when you get about 30, 35, it's like, what do you mean you got student loan debt? What is that? That's ridiculous. So that's teaching her 2 really good lessons, and it's putting her in a really good financial place. I'll tell you, I paid for half of my school. My parents paid for the other half. And because they were able to do that, it gave me such a leg up when I got out. I mean, I was able to buy my first house by, what was I, 23? I mean, it was crazy. So it really just sets you up. but you also learn so much along the way when you're working and doing these other things. So I agree 100% with that. Those gals are being set up. It's a lot. It's hard at first, right? They're probably calling home, and it's like,
oh,
hey,
no, I didn't receive calls.
No.
Her whole entire senior year of high school, she resented that.
Oh, I bet.
And then it wasn't until we had it was spring break, her freshman year. She called me up. You have the worst insurance ever. It doesn't even pay copays. And I was like, I said, listen, here's what I'm going to tell you. You need to call you need to call or Google how to become independent and get on Texas Medicaid yourself. And I'll write you a letter saying I'm no longer going to financially support you. Mm-hmm. I will basically divorce you as my daughter.
Yeah.
And you can get on Texas Medicaid. And then you can, and I said, also, I have your phone. So if you would like, I need you to go to Verizon and I need you to get your own plan.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to give you 30 days to do all this. And then it was like, wow. It was a bunch of arguing. But for her, she needed to vent. And then she needed to see that I'm not buckling under extreme, what do you call it, manipulation.
So you guys are learning a really important, let's go back to the game and charisma issue. This is a very important called setting boundaries.
Yep.
We set a boundary. You're not going to cross it because obviously you're cutting off her cell phone. Because what's the consequence for not accepting the boundary? You cut off the cell phone, and then she doesn't have a cell phone, right? So she'll learn that pretty quick. And so, of course, she's got big crocodile tears.
There was no crocodile
dad.
No,
okay.
It was anger. It was yelling. And then it was, okay, so tell me how I can make this work with the limited amount of funds that I have.
Yes.
She's like, all my other friends. So that's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
What do your other friends have? Well, my other friends have, they're on their dad's plan. And I said, well, what do their dads do? Well, he works for this company. He works for that company. I said, what do? I work for myself. I said, in order to have one of those plans, I'd be paying $1,700 a month.
Yeah.
I said, I would much rather pay that bill. Why don't I just pay that bill? And I can get it reimbursed. They just don't pay it up front. So now that you know that, does that make that a little bit better? Okay. And then I went and I said, why don't you come home and we can get a brand new plan? So then I went and got a brand new plan.
Yeah. And
so now, like, where my ex-wife was like, this is a horrible. And now she's like, hey, I want to get on this plan. Mm-hmm. She's also self-employed.
Yeah.
So, and now I'm getting ready to have to add Kendra onto the plan, right? So it's just like you're saying, setting boundaries is great. The other thing that I did not think was going to be hard is the blending. For 2 years, Kendra's middle daughter was my best friend. She'd call me to come pick her up from school. Can you pick up Whataburger?
Yeah.
Whatever. And we did. Her and my son Cooper are best friends. Mm-hmm. Now, the month before we got married, it was like poltergeist.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So now I'm setting the boundary of, okay, there's no riding with me anymore. You don't get to ride with me because every time you do, it's huffs and puffs. It's a lot of negative energy, and I don't want that around. So now I'm doing what I tell people to do in bad relationships. Distance yourself.
Yeah, put a little distance there.
Put a little distance and allow some room to breathe.
And then my favorite part is when you put that distance, it's like, now let's see how they react.
Yes, it's the reaction that always tells you.
It tells you what's really going on, which we learned that little lesson last week.
We did learn that lesson. I would say for people who, people are watching this on Facebook Live, I think Jason's giving you some insight that you guys should give him credit for, because I think a lot of times Jason kind of walks around with this veil of invincibility, which isn't true. I mean, to be successful, you have unsuccessful parts of your life.
Yes.
And you should, because if all people see is that everything is perfect, then that's wrong. I mean, you and I were talking about how, like, I had my first phone call from a lawyer.
Yeah.
That really threw me for a loop. I'm like, I'm here doing 49 change orders and you're questioning why it's costing so much?
Yeah, and then you and I were having the conversation. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's no big deal, man. Just do this, call your attorney, do that. And you're like, oh, okay. I'm like, trust me.
Yeah,
the first one's scary, and after that, it's not that bad.
Yes, and I, Will gave me the best advice. Will said, because I think when you do wholesale deals, people realize after you did the wholesale deal that you made money on them, so they want to come back at you.
Yeah.
And Will said the first time someone came back out after him, he's just like, fine, I'll just pay it off because I don't want this energy. He's like, now I'm just going to fight.
Yeah.
And so he goes, the first one is always the scariest. Yeah. And you said that too. And you're like, now it just becomes a part of doing business. And I've talked with other builders too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it happens all the time with builders.
The guy that gave me some of the best advice was Kevin Schlesky with Echo Homes.
Oh, okay.
He builds an amazing product. And I view him as a guy that it's like, dude, I want to go bash beers with you because you fucking kick ass with the stuff that you build. And we both have a mutual admiration. And I called him up, and he gave me 2 hours of his life.
Oh, that's pretty awesome.
And he was driving back from Conroe, and he said, this is what I wish I knew, and this is how I'm setting myself up now. And he said, and also, you need to give yourself a break, that as builders and as business owners, you are constantly having to evolve systems and processes to protect yourself.
100%. Well, but here's the important part. Let's go back to networking, because this will kind of tie a nice bow on this one. The only reason he picked your phone up is because you're out there working. And he's like, I know this guy.
And you have good product.
Yeah, you have a good product. But here's one of the big announcements. We're getting into commercial hardcore in 2022. Hardcore. We're building a whole Mr. Texas real estate commercial division. And my first job is to network with all the big commercial movers and shakers around town. And I've done that with Sean. Everybody probably knows Sean. But with Sean over at, what is the name of his company? I always forget it. I can picture their logo right now. But anyway, so hanging out with Sean Harvey, he gives me the kind of ins and outs on light industrial and some commercial assets, that sort of thing. So Lee and Associates, they're the largest industrial broker in the state. They're huge. And I think they're only like 4 years old. I mean, it's kind of crazy. But the reason he answers my phone call, because he's like, look, this guy's doing it. He's already buying some commercial assets, and he's killing it in single family. So it's like, yeah, come on board, man. We'd love to work with you guys and sell you some product, introduce you to some other investors and that sort of thing. So where a lot of people miss is they look for the motivation and the why first. What they really should be in is in the action. Like, let's get to the action, because action will tell me everything about your mindset. A couple of phone calls, couple text message, disappear. You're really not that serious. You're really not.
Right.
I made a couple of offers. I talked to a couple of people, didn't get a deal. I'm out. You really weren't that serious.
It's the same as going to a bar as a single guy. Well, I asked 3 girls out, or asked 3 girls if I could buy them a drink, or asked 3 girls for the phone numbers, and they said no.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well,
so now I'm going to leave the bar?
Yeah. Like,
the bar's open until 2 o'clock. Do you know how many girls go through the bar?
Well, and then you sit back.
You need to up your game is what you need to do.
Is this an issue with you, or is this an issue with the place we're in? I mean, it's when I look at relationships, at least in the first attraction phase, it's a sales and marketing game. It really is. And so is it a problem with the product, or is it a problem with the marketing and sales process? So you start to break that down for guys, and it's, hey, what are you doing? What are you saying? What did she say? You kind of start going through that whole process, and it's no different than any other business. So where did you want to go from here?
I am good. We are, this was the end of a great podcast. JB, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
You gave a bunch of good energy. We were all over the map, which is what I love.
Which is great, yeah.
I don't like podcasts that are just like singularly focused.
I can't.
It's boring.
I cannot sit there and talk about real estate the whole time. Like I just can't do it.
That's why this is a show called Nailed It and not a show called Real Estate.
Yeah, real estate it.
Yeah, we're it's life, business, and I don't know, your life and business.
Yeah,
and money. I mean, those are the things. I tell you what, I've been broke, and I was not happy. So when people say
sucks.
money doesn't buy happiness, I would just say, be on a yacht with some of your closest people that you enjoy being around. Pay for that yacht.
Yeah,
and you got off the yacht, and this was no lie.
Oh, this is so funny. Yeah.
Jason got off the yacht, and he goes, 2022, this is on the list. The Sea Ray is on the list.
I need one of these.
Because it was just a joy to be on there. And you, I'll never forget Kendra's mom. She was like, is the boat big enough for all of us? And I was like,
yeah.
I was like, wait until we get in there. It's going to be a lot big. I mean, when you park a 40-foot yacht up next to a 58-foot catamaran, it's going to look small.
Well, no, and that was a 56.
No.
That was a 56, dude. It was pretty big. Yeah, it was pretty big.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm glad you came. I'm glad that you came on the podcast. We put this together when we were, and Jason was like, "What are you going to talk about?" Before we went live, and I was like, "I'm just going to ask you one question, and then we'll let it go from there."
We'll just let it go. We didn't even talk about the shark. Should we talk about the shark?
No. Because I'm going to talk about the shark on November the 11th.
Okay.
So tune in to next week's episode. Thank you, JB, again for coming.
Thanks so much for having me.
Like, love, and share this. Go to Nailed It. Go to Mr. Texas. Go to Total Wealth Academy. Like us all on Facebook. Peace out, homies.